Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. Indigo by Satyajit Ray. Now, this is going to be an extremely riveting and engaging story. It's a slightly long story, but it's a story like no other. And the reason I say this is because it is a horror story, but a horror story also with a difference. Let's go through. Of course, I'm sure you know about Satyajit Ray, clearly one of India's best known filmmakers, uh, has made a name for India on the global stage of cinema. And he was also known as a writer, especially of stories in the mystery and the horror genre. And if you have time, you should read some of the other stories of Satyajit Ray. Many of them are available in PDF. So it's not something like, you need to buy the book. Just read a story, you get an idea about the kind of construction of characters, construction of themes, construction of plots that he did. Okay, very fascinating. Now, before I get into it, my suggestion always is for you to read the box before the story begins. So I'm sure you do that. But let me just highlight a couple of points before we get into the text of the story. And these are what I'm going to say now includes words which you should include in your answers. Very important because his horror stories revolve around supernatural phenomena, spirits, ghosts, and paranormal activity. Now, the way Satyajit Ray wrote his stories was that he would include normal day-to-day activities. So you would feel that, array, this is something which happens with me, or it would happen somewhere in the neighborhood on a daily basis. Okay. But he would suddenly weave in some activity which cannot be normally explained. Now, this particular story was originally written in Bengali in 1968, and it's a first person account. And the main themes of Indigo, as I said, and please note this down, are paranormal activity. I will put this in the notes on Instagram also. Unsettled past. Please remember this. It's an important phrase you should use in your answers. Unsettled past. Then there is a word which has been used in the box out here, shape shifting. Shape shifting is the transformation of a form or a shape. Okay. And the loss of control, because that's how the protagonist in this particular story, Aniruddha Bose, he loses control in the second half of the story. So that's about the story. I will do line by line description. I will also keep explaining the themes of the story. And please don't mind, since it's hot, I'm also going to be eating ice cream once in a while. So please don't mind. Please grab an ice cream for yourself if you want to have a party together. Okay, ice cream party during Indigo. Okay, so let's get started with the explanation of Indigo.
Okay, so I hope you can see the script on the screen. This is taken from another edition purely for educational purposes. My name is Aniruddha Bose. And it's quite possible that this particular edition may have a few words here and there different. So keep your book with you. That is obviously the one you need to refer to. My name is Aniruddha Bose. I am 29 years old and a bachelor. So what you're finding out here is that important details are being given upfront. The name of the person, the age of the protagonist, and his marital status. For the last 8 years, I have been working in an advertising agency. So his occupation and his location in Calcutta. So there are 5 important facts which have been revealed to you right at the beginning. With the salary I get, I live in reasonable comfort in a flat in Sardar Shankar Road. So the more precise location in Calcutta. The flat has 2 south-facing rooms and is on the ground floor. 2 years ago, I bought an ambassador car. Now, please remember all these facts from the point of view of MCQs. I bought an ambassador car, which I drive myself. I do a bit of writing in my spare time. 3 of my stories have been published in magazines and have been well appreciated by my acquaintances. Acquaintances means people who you know, but you're not really friends with. You're not extremely friends, but you're fairly, you know them in a general manner. but I know I cannot make a living by writing alone. So he does need the job that he has at the advertising agency. So the first paragraph establishes the protagonist and the world around him, the small world around him. Now, it's important to note that the car is not very old. It's just 2 years old. So fairly new is what one would say. And he's a part-time writer, works in an ad agency. For the last few months, I haven't been writing at all. So he's a writer, but for the last few months, he has not been writing. And now he reveals to you the reason why he has not been writing. Instead, I have read a lot about indigo plantations in Bengal and Bihar in the 19th century. Now, for those of you who would recall your history lessons in class 10, you would recall that you had chapters relating to the Gandhian period in which indigo was mentioned, especially with relation to the Champaran Satyagraha. Okay. I'm something of an authority on the subject now. Authority on the subject because he has read so much about indigo. So he feels an authority means he's some kind of an expert on the subject. Now, indigo is the source of blue dye called indigo. The indigo plant gives rise to the blue dye called indigo, and it is planted in Bihar extensively, also Bengal, and this had led to the Champaran Satyagraha by Mahatma Gandhi because the British planters wanted a very high, there was a Tinkatia system wherein they wanted a very high revenue in the form of the indigo plantation from the indigo planters. They would force the farmers to grow indigo because that's what would fetch them very huge prices back in Britain. So the story is linked to indigo because it was the experience that led him to reading about indigo. Okay, so that's what he's talking about. How the British exploited the poor peasants, how the peasants rose in revolt, and how finally, with the invention of synthetic indigo in Germany, the cultivation of indigo was wiped out from our country. Because once synthetic indigo started getting produced in Germany, they stopped asking the peasants to grow indigo in Bihar and Bengal. All this I know by heart because he has read so much. It is to describe the terrible experience which instilled in me this interest in indigo that I have taken up my pen today. So he's now going to tell us why he has been for the last few months been reading so much about indigo. What was the experience that led him to start reading about indigo that made him have an interest in indigo plantation? At this point, I must tell you something about my past. My father was a well-known physician, that is a medical practitioner in Munger. Now, this spelling is the old spelling of Munger. The present-day Munger, you wouldn't know it, but your parent generation would know of a serial called Mungeri Lal Ke Haseen Sapne. Okay, which means someone who keeps daydreaming. So Munger is a town in Bihar, and that's what that's the old spelling of Munger. That's where I was born, and that's where I did my schooling in a missionary school, that is a convent school. I have a brother 5 years older than me. He studied medicine in England and is now attached to a hospital in a suburb of London called Golders Green. He has no plans to return to India. Now, it's an interesting detail that he has given, that his brother works in England and does not have the intention of returning to India, because the story at the end, in the second half, is actually about a Britisher who has a connection with the indigo plantation. So I found it an interesting little detail, because the fact that even if Ray had not put the detail about the fact that the elder brother was working in England, had no intentions of coming back, worked in this hospital, is irrelevant. If he had not given this detail, it would not have mattered. But the fact that Ray puts this detail makes us think, and it doesn't have a direct connection, but it's interesting the connections that get made. I'll keep talking about it as we go to that. My father died when I was 16. Soon after his death, my mother and I left Munger and came to Calcutta, where we stayed with my maternal uncle. I went to St. Xavier's College and took my bachelor's degree. Simple. I mean, no need to explain all this. Soon after that, I got my job with the advertising agency. My uncle's influence helped. He's not denying it. So what does this indicate? Please keep looking at these kind of lines and keep thinking, what does this indicate? It indicates honesty. Honesty in the sense that he's not cagey. He's not reluctant to reveal it to the reader that my uncle's influence also helped, but I wasn't an unworthy candidate. It was not as though I was a bekar ka candidate who was not worthy of that particular job at the ad agency. I had been a good student. I spoke English fluently, and most of all, I had the ability to carry myself well in an interview. One small thing I would want to tell you. Many students keep asking me about public speaking. One of the ways to improve public speaking, if you do not have the time to read a newspaper, is to read these kind of stories aloud. And when you read them aloud, you try to read them in a way where you are modulating your voice, where you have the right kind of diction, where you have the right kind of body language, the use of hands, the use of your shoulder, your posture, because that will help you. Because trust me, too many of us focus too much on syllabus hai, exams hai, question answers hai, marks lane hai. Yes, all this is important, but this is not what is going to make you a winner in the examination of life. In order to be a winner in the examination of life, it is your soft skills, it is your communication ability to communicate effectively, that's going to make you a winner. And trust me, someone who has the ability to speak well, speak with a lot of clarity. Why do we love listening to a Ravi Shastri and a Harsha Bhogle more than any other commentator? It's for the simple reason that they are able to tell stories from the cricket field of cricket in a voice that is appealing, that makes you feel comfortable, and it's said with a lot of lucidity and clarity. And those are the traits that will help you stand. Otherwise, I mean, Harsha Bhogle is an IIM from Ahmedabad. There will be so many IIM graduates from Ahmedabad. What made Harsha Bhogle stand out? Please think about it. Okay. My early years in Munger had instilled certain habits. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to just kind of do a Hindi Rupantar and finish it off and behave like, itne sare views aa rahe hain. No. Do it in a way that helps the students. My early years in Munger had instilled certain habits in me. Instill means it was because of my upbringing in Munger that I had developed certain habits in which I have not been able to give up. One of these was an overpowering desire to go far away from the hectic life of Calcutta from time to time. So he liked to escape into the rural countryside, into the rural part of India, into the countryside, whenever he got an opportunity. I'd done so several times ever since I bought my car. So his car was used to going out of station. Okay, please make a note of this. On weekends, I made trips to Diamond Harbour. People, those of you in Calcutta would be familiar with this. Port Canning and Hassanabad along the Dum Dum Road. Each time I had gone alone because, to be quite honest, I didn't really have a close friend in Calcutta. Please make a point. He's not really someone who has many close friends with whom he can travel. That's why Pramod's letter made me so happy. Pramod had been my classmate in Munger, where he had done his early schooling. So he had kept in touch with Pramod. Now that's again an important aspect, that he is someone who keeps in touch with the past. Please make a note of it. The past, what I told you at the beginning, the unsettled past is an important element in this particular story. Like the other other character who comes in the later half of the story, Aniruddha Bose is also in touch with this past. Not so much with his present, where he does not have many close friends, despite the fact that he had moved to Calcutta at the age of 16 and he's now in his late 20s. So for the last 12 to 13 years, he has been in that particular city. After I came away to Calcutta, we continued to keep in touch for 3 or 4 years. Okay. Not a very great important detail. Then perhaps it was shayad meri hi galti thi, that I stopped writing. Suddenly, the other day, when I came back from work, I found a letter from Pramod waiting for me on my desk. He had written from Dumka, that's the place where he stayed, work now. I have a job in the forest department here. I have my own quarters. Why don't you take a week's leave and come over? So, from Dumka, Pramod has invited him, okay, to come and stay with him. Some leave was due to me. So I spoke to my boss, and on the 27th of April, please make a note of this date, extremely important. You need to know this because you need to use this in your answers. I shall remember the day as long as I live. I packed my bags and set off for Dumka. Pramod Pramod had not suggested that I go by car. It was my idea because, as he's already said, that he's used to taking his car out for drives outside Calcutta. Dumka was 200 miles away, so it would take about 5 to 6 hours at the most. I decided to have a big breakfast, set off by 10, and reach there before it was evening, by dusk. At least that was the plan. That was the plan. But there was a snag right at the start. Now you see, and I want to just point out one particular detail. Now you see, here he mentions the plan. And then he goes to the next paragraph, but he has used this connector called at least. At least that was the plan. So it makes it a slightly conversational because he's telling you a story. Satyajit Ray is telling you a story. So when if any of you is attempting an original story or maybe a narrative essay, please make use of these characters. You should kind of, note down these kind of small details which can help your essay composition also read that much better. At least that was the plan, but there was a snag right at the start. I had my meal and was about to put a pan into my mouth when my father's old friend, Uncle Mohit, suddenly turned up. He kind of came to meet him. He's a grave old man whom I was meeting after 10 years. Okay, again, an indication that he does not kind of keep in touch with people in the present. So there is no question of giving him short shrift in the sense that he has come just when he's about to leave, and he cannot say, because he was meeting him after 10 years, he cannot say that please come tomorrow or come after a week or so because I'm going out. He can't do that. He has to treat him respectfully also because he was his father's old friend. I had to offer him tea and listen to him chat for over an hour. So he got delayed. I saw Uncle Mohit off and shoved my suitcase and bedding into the back seat of my car. Okay. Yeah. Just then my ground floor neighbor, Bhola Babu, walked up with his 4-year-old son Pintu in tow. Tow means along with his son. Where are you off to all by yourself? Now that's strange because he has shown a tendency of going out on travel for the last 2 years. So it's a little surprising that Bhola Babu should ask him this as though it's something unusual, or maybe he has never seen him doing so before. When I told him, he said with some concern, but that's a long way off, 200 miles. Shouldn't you have arranged for a driver? That, why do you want to drive yourself? I said I was a very cautious driver myself and had taken such care of my car that it was still as good as new. So there is really nothing to worry about. Bhola Babu wished me luck and went into his house. I glanced at my wristwatch before turning the ignition key. It was 10 minutes past 11. So he's 70 minutes late already. Point number 2. Bhola Babu's concern is what I call a red flag. It kind of, your antenna should go up. Ray is dropping a very small hint. Usne toka, usne pucha कि क्यों जा रहे हो? Okay, so it's a red flag of sort, as though something could happen. Okay, he's just giving the Uncle Mohit coming, Bhola Babu asking. These are all small sprinklings of hints that Ray is dropping in your direction, seeing whether you are able to catch it or will you drop it like the Pakistani fielders. I saw some interesting reel. By the way, I'm not having my ice cream because I already finished. Aap khate raho. Although I avoided Howrah and took the Bali Bridge road, it took me an hour and a half to reach Chandernagore. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Driving through dingy. Dingy means something which is very gloomy and dreary. Okay, please note down the meaning of this word. It means gloomy or something dreary. These first 30 miles were so dreary that the fun of a car journey was quite lost. But from there on, as the car emerged into open country, the effect was magical. Where in the city, now that's what I said at the beginning, Ray makes it seem very normal, and suddenly there will be a carny twist. Where in the city did one get to see such a clear blue sky, free from chimney smoke, and breathe air so pure and so redolent of the smell of earth? Now, redolent means something which is suggestive. Okay, suggestive or reminiscent of the smell of earth. Okay. Okay. So the two things which I want to talk about: the use of imagery, the clear blue sky free from chimney smoke. And it is a little ironic. Please make a star mark on chimney, because there would be a chimney in the second half of the story. So please keep making this kind of, just like I had taught you the cookie lady, the hints that the writer was dropping on the way. Similarly, Ray is dropping hints on the way. Okay, so please make a note, star mark on chimney. Okay, or write it in your notebook. Then the other thing which I want to find just now, what I point out, is the theme of foreshadowing. What we read in Macbeth, the theme of foreshadowing, which means Uncle Mohit and what Bhola Babu says. The delay by the unexpected guest and Bhola Babu's warning. That shouldn't you have taken a driver instead? Yeah. Okay. Now, at about 12:30, as I was nearing Burdwan, I began to feel the consequence of having eaten so early, because he had a big breakfast, but he had it quite early, right? Hungry, I pulled up by the station, which fell on the way, went into a restaurant and had a light meal of toast, omelette, and coffee. Then I resumed. So he's giving you very, very detailed stuff. Then I resumed my journey. I still had 135 miles to go. So he has come about 65 miles from Calcutta, from his home. 20 miles from Burdwan, there was a small town called Panagarh. There I had to leave the Grand Trunk Road and take the road to Elam Bazar. From Elam Bazar, the road went via Suri and Masanjor to Dumka. Okay, so he knew his route pretty well without the GPS. The military camp at Panagarh had just come into view when there was a bang from the rear of my car. I had a flat tire. I got down, I had a spare tire and could easily fit it. So he kind of took care of it. I mean, pretty efficient in such matters. The thought that other cars would go whizzing by, their occupants laughing at my predicament. Predicament means his state, that he has to kind of fix the flat tire, was not he didn't like the fact that they were all laughing at him. Nevertheless, I brought out the jack from the boot and set to work. By the time I finished putting the new tire on, I was dripping with sweat. Very humid climate. My watch showed 2:30. So it's constantly giving you a sense of the time going by. It had turned muggy in the meantime. Muggy means something extremely humid, a lot of humidity. Now, this paragraph is important, and I'll tell you why it's important. The cool breeze that was blowing even an hour ago and was making the bamboo trees sway had stopped. So now there is a stillness in the air. There's no breeze blowing. Now everything was still. As I got back into the car, I noticed a blue-black patch in the west above the treetops. So he's giving you a sense of how the weather is also slowly changing. The stillness is a sense of, it's a bit of a red flag, another red flag. That you normally, when you go in the countryside and it's all open, you expect wind and breeze, but suddenly it's all very still. You understand? He's preparing you for what is going to follow. As I got back into the car, I noticed a blue-black patch in the west above the treetops. Clouds was a storm brewing up, a nor'wester. It was useless to speculate. Now, nor'westers are local thunderstorms. You would have read that in geography class 10. They are local thunderstorms known as Kalbaisakhi in Bengal, even in Assam. They're accompanied by heavy rainfall. So what does this indicate? This indicates, and they always have April and May. This is April. It shows Satyajit's rays attention to minute detail. He has not got any geographic or climatic detail wrong. Okay, that's what I like about a good writer. Research should be very, very precise. It was useless to speculate. I must drive faster. I helped myself to some hot tea from the flask and resumed my journey. But before I could cross Elam Bazaar, I was caught in the storm because nor'westers are accompanied by the storm. I had enjoyed such nor'westers in the past, sitting in my room, and I'd even recited Tagore's poems to myself to blend with the mood. But now he was caught in the middle of the storm. I had no idea that driving through open country, such a nor'wester could strike terror into the heart. It was such a fierce storm and followed by rainfall, claps of thunder. So when there is thunder, so he's using the elements of the weather to create the ambience, create the mood, create the atmosphere. Always make me uncomfortable. They seem to show a nasty side of nature. Please use this key phrase, a nasty side of nature, a vicious assault on helpless humanity. Helpless humanity at this point in time is he, Aniruddha Bose himself, that they're viciously assaulting, attacking humanity like me, and I'm helpless at this point in time. It seemed as if the shafts of lightning were all aimed at my poor ambassador car, because sometimes you can get even electrocuted when there is a lightning, a streak of lightning. And one of them was sure to find its mark sooner or later. So he's now feeling extremely apprehensive at this point in time. In this precarious means vulnerable. He's very vulnerable at this point in time. I passed Suri and was well on my way to Masanjor when there was yet another bang which no one could mistake for a thunderclap. It was not atmospheric thunderclap. It was the second flat tire. I realized that another of my tires had decided to call it a day. So you realize that even though he's thought that he had taken good care of his car had a second flat tire. I gave up hope. It was now pouring with rain. My watch said 5:30. He thought by dusk he would reach Dumka, but he was still a long way off. For the last 20 miles, I had to keep. For the last 20 miles, I had to keep the speedometer down to 15. He had to drive slowly, or I would have been well past Masanjor by now. Where was I? Nothing was visible. Ahead, nothing was visible through the rain-swept windscreen. The wiper was on, but its efforts were more frolicsome than effective. Frolicsome means playful. Fun and frolic hote na? Frolicsome means playful. So it was not being effective in giving him a clear view of the road ahead. It being April, the sun should still be up, but it seemed to be like late evening. It seemed as though the sun had also chutti maar ke nikal gaya tha. Okay, called it a day. I opened the door on my right slightly and looked out. What I saw did not suggest the presence of a town, though I could make out a couple of buildings through the trees. There was no question of getting out of the car and exploring, but one thing was clear enough. There were no shops along the road as far as the eye could see. So he could not see any shops. It was raining. He could see a couple of buildings in the distance. So, So that's an important detail about the kind of place he has got stuck. That's what he's talking about. And I had no more spare tires, obviously. After waiting in the car for a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes, it struck me that no other vehicle had passed by in all this time. On this road, there is no other vehicle passing. So he got a doubt. Was I on the right road? There had been no mistake up to Suri that he was pretty sure about. But suppose I had taken a wrong turning after Suri. And he thought that it was not impossible, that it is pretty much possible to have made such a mistake in this kind of rain, which had blinded him where visibility was so poor. But even if I had made a mistake, it was not as if I had strayed into the jungles of Africa or South America. Wherever I was, There was no doubt that I was still in the district of Birbhum. I mean, he was sure about his larger geographical location within 50 miles of Shanti Niketan. And as soon as the rain stopped, my troubles would be over. So he thought, once the rain stopped, I mean, I should be able to reach my destination. I might even find a repair shop in about a mile or so. So he pulls out a packet of wills from his pocket, lights a cigarette, and he recalls Bola Babu's warning. Bola Babu must have had some kind of an experience. Otherwise, how could he give him such advice that he should take a driver along with him in future? And he thought, in future, I would do so. But even before he could complete his thought, honk, 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 someone was honking. So some other vehicle had come on the same route. I turned around and saw a truck standing behind. Why was it blowing its horn? Was I standing in the middle of the road? Because the rain was so blinding, he did not realize that he was standing right in the middle of the road. The rain had let up a little. I opened the door, got out, and found that what the truck guy was honking for was not without reason. He had reason to honk because his car was right in the middle of the road. When my tire burst, my car had swerved. It had moved in such a way that it had blocking the entire road. So there was no way for the space for the truck to pass. Take the car to one side, sir. The Sikh driver had by now come, Satyajit, come out of the truck. What's the matter? He asked. A puncture. I shrugged to convey my state of helplessness. He just shrugged. If you could lend me a hand, we could move the car to one side and then you could pass. The Sikh driver's helper came out too. The three of us pushed the car to one side of the road. Then I found out from the two men that I was indeed on the wrong road to Dumka. This was not, he had taken a wrong turning from after Suri. I had taken a wrong turning and would have to drive back 3 miles to get back on the right track. I also learned that there were no repair shops nearby. The truck went on its way. As its noise faded away, the truth struck me like a hammer blow. I had reached a dead end. That's when this thing, no repair shops nearby. I am on the wrong route. I need to go back 3 miles in order to get back on the right route. And 3, it's pouring and it's also dark. So everything going against Aniruddha Bose at this point in time. You understand? There was no way I could reach Dumka that night. I had no idea how and where I would spend the night. So he's now feeling a little worried, as about how he's going to spend the night because he's in the middle of nowhere. The roadside puddles were alive with the chorus of frogs. Now that's an interesting audio imagery that he has created, sound imagery of chorus, the rainy season, I'm sure many of you would have heard how frogs croak together, and it is not a very pleasant kind of sound that you hear. The orchestra of frogs is not a great music, is not music by any stretch of imagination. The rain had now been reduced to a light drizzle. So he's now kind of giving you very specific details. And the fact that, thunderclap, thunderstorms in literature have always been used as some kind of warning signals, suddenly something happening, in terms of a loud sound. I got back into the car and I was about to light a second cigarette when I spotted a light through the window on my side. I opened the door again. Through the branches of a tree, I saw a rectangle of orange light, a window. Just as smoke meant the presence of fire, a kerosene lamp meant the presence of a human being. So he realized that he could see somewhere a house, a building, and there was light inside, which means there was somebody inside. Okay, just imagine. I want you to imagine this. It's raining outside. You are in a car. There is not a single human being anywhere outside. Visibility is very poor. It is there is lightning, there is thunder. As I said, it's pouring. And you see a light, big light in the distance. Okay? Imagine it. Be in that state of mind. Only then you will be able to enjoy the story. Just don't look at it as a syllabus. Just enjoy the story. Okay, be in that thing, use your imagination to picturize it like that. Okay, there was a house nearby and there were occupants in it. He doesn't know who they are. He can't even see that clearly in the rain, but he's able to see that there is some light there, which would mean the presence of human beings. I got out of the car with my torch. The window wasn't too far away. I had to go and investigate. There was a narrow footpath branching off from the main road, which seemed to go in the direction of the house with the window. I locked the car and set off. So he's kind of decided that I will go and investigate, find out who they are, and maybe he could stay the night there. I made my way, avoiding puddles as far as possible. As I passed a tamarind tree, tamarind as in imli, the house came into view. Now he could see the house a little more clearly. Well, hardly a house. It wasn't really something which I could call a house. It was a small cottage. It was a small little house with a corrugated tin roof. Have you seen those kind of roofs which are like tin? I mean, rural areas would have that. In urban slums, you would find it, right? Not so much now, earlier, definitely. Through an open door, I could see a hurricane lantern and the leg of a bed. A hurricane lantern, just Google hurricane lantern, you would know what it looks like. Is anybody there? I called out. A stocky, middle-aged man with a thick mustache came out of the room and squinted. Squinted means, the torchlight, you can't suddenly, it kind of hits your eyes, so he squints. And he's a middle-aged man. I turned the spot away from his face so that he doesn't feel uncomfortable to see. Where are you from, sir? The man asked. In a few words, I described my predicament. Predicament means his problem at that point in time. Yeah, squint means to see with eyes partially closed. In a few words, I described my predicament. Is there a place here where I can spend the night? I asked. I shall pay for it, of course. In the dark bungalow, you mean? Now, dark bungalows, please make a note of this. Dark bungalows were places where officials could stay for the night, and usually they were constructed in an isolated, desolate kind of place. The name dark bungalow, dark means post, right? The name dark bungalow came because this is where travelers on a postal route could be accommodated. Place A to place B, if it is a route on which post is delivered. So there were these dark bungalows where officials could stay for the night. That's how the name came about. But immediately, dark bungalow? But I didn't see any dark bungalow. But immediately I realized my mistake. I'd followed the light of the lantern and had therefore failed to look around. That besides this cottage, there was a large bungalow which now came into view. You mean that one? I asked. Yes, sir, but there is no bedding. Okay, there's no bedding there. You can't have meals there. I don't know about you, but I'm getting goosebumps already because I am completely, when I do something, I go into that zone. I'm in a trance now. So I'm now imagining in a dark evening, talking to a stranger. I'm Aniruddha Bose, and I suddenly see that there is a big building also there, which I had failed to notice earlier. Keep imagining. Keep imagining. I'm trying to hypnotize you. Yes, sir, but there is no bedding, and you can't have meals there. You can't eat anything there. I'm carrying my own bedding, and I hope there is a bed there. If there is a cot, I can put my bedding on it, and I can sleep the night. Yes, sir, a charpoy. So there is a bed, and I can put my bedding on it so that I can sleep comfortably, a pillow, a bed sheet, and stuff like that. And I see there is a stove lit in your room. You must be cooking your own meal. The man broke into a smile and asked if I would care for coarse chapatis, rough chapatis prepared by him and urad ki dal cooked by his wife. I said it would do very nicely, marta kya na karta hai, bhook lagi hai to kuch bhi chalta hai. I liked all kinds of chapatis, and udad was my favorite dal. I don't know what the bungalow must have been like in its heyday. Heyday means when it was, new, when it was being used. Now it seemed to be an unused property, right? But that's not what he says. So he says the bedroom was large and the ceiling was high. I don't know if you have ever stayed. I have stayed in these kind of places constructed during the British times. The ceiling would be very high. And frankly speaking, it's not an easy thing to stay in the night because the bathrooms would be as big as a drawing room or a living room of our house, right? Huge kind of thing. You don't feel comfortable. Um, uh, Constructed during the time of the Raj, that is during the British times, the bedroom was large and the ceiling was high. The furniture consisted of a charpoy, a table set against the wall on one side, and a chair with a broken arm. So the arm of the chair was broken, and there was a table and there was a charpoy. These were the only three items as far as the furniture was concerned. Please make a note of it from an MCQ point of view. The chowkidar or the caretaker, this particular gentleman, had in the meantime lit a lantern for me, another lantern for him, so that there is light. He now put it on the table. What's your name? I asked. Sukhan Ram, sir. Has anyone, please make a note of it, has anybody ever lived in this bungalow? And am I the first one? No, sir, others have come too. There was a gentleman who stayed here for 2 nights last winter. Okay, so which means it has been inhabited, it has been used in the recent past. I hope there are no ghosts now. Now that's a okay one. What do you call it? A full toss. Full toss. Satyajit Ray is bowling at you, so that you can kind of get an idea about kitna bounce karta hai, right? On the pitch. I mean, whether you can hit it or not bounce. I said in a jocular tone. Jocular means almost like joking. There's so much of text, I find it difficult. God forbid, he said, no one has ever complained of ghosts. No one has really complained, who has stayed here, has ever complained of ghosts. I must say, I found his words reassuring that, oh, okay, good, there are no ghosts here. If a place is spooky, which means having ghosts, and old dark bungalows have a reputation for being spooky, it will be so at all times. When was this bungalow built? I asked. Sukhan began to unroll my bedding and said, this used to be a sahib's bungalow. One sahib used to stay here. A sahib? Yes, sir. An indigo planter. Now you get the connection. Now you know why the story is called Indigo. Now you know why he's reading about indigo for the past few months. Now it starts. Now Kahani starts. There used to be an indigo factory close by. Now only the chimney is standing. I told you, make a note of the chimney, right? Because the chimney reference comes later also. I knew indigo was cultivated in these parts at one time. I'd seen ruins of indigo factories in Munger too in my childhood. So he was familiar with indigo factories, the fact that indigo cultivation did take place in this part of the country. It was 10:30 when I went to bed after dining on Sukhan's coarse chapatis and udad ki dal. I had sent a telegram to Pramod. Now, I don't know how he could send a telegram. Because for telegram, you need to go to a post office. So I'm a little surprised that he says that I sent a telegram to Pramod. Now, this particular line does not sound convincing to me at all. Saying that I would arrive this afternoon. Oh, I had sent a telegram. Okay, sorry. My mistake. Sorry. I had sent a telegram to Pramod from Calcutta, not here. He would naturally wonder what had happened. But it was useless to think of that now. All I could do now was to congratulate myself on having found a shelter. So he's worried. Pramod must be wondering, ki abhi tak aaya kyun nahi? But I'm thinking that he was thinking, itna barish ho raha hai, so he must have got stuck somewhere. He would worry. In future, I would do as Bhola Babu had advised. I had learned a lesson, and lessons learned the hard way are not forgotten easily. That he would take a driver the next time. I put the lantern in the adjoining bathroom. The little light that seeped through the door, which I had kept slightly ajar, means slightly open, was enough. I usually find it difficult to sleep with the light on, and yet I did not extinguish the light, even though what I needed badly was sleep. Because he was a little scared out there. Obviously, he's not saying it, but he's scared. I was worried about my car, which I had left standing on the road because it had a flat tire. But it was certainly safer to do so in a village than in a city. So I thought, kuch nahi hoga, it is safe out there. The sound of drizzle had stopped. The air was now filled with the croaking of frogs and the shrill chirping of crickets, the insects which make a noise in the night. From my bed in that ancient bungalow in this remote village, the city seemed to belong to another planet. He seemed to be like as though he's on another planet. Indigo. Oh, yeah, I thought of the play by Bandhu Mitra, Nil Darpan, The Mirror of Indigo. Please make a note of this so that you are able to know this, that what is the play that he thinks about. Nil Darpan, from an MCQ point of view. As a college student, I had watched a performance of it in a theater on Cornwallis Street. I did not know how long I had slept when a sound suddenly awakened me. Now, these last few pages are going to be the most dramatic. Okay? Something was scratching at the door. The door was bolted. Must be a dog or a jackal, I thought. And in a minute or so, the noise stopped. Some animal was scratching its paw on the door. Just imagine you're all alone. It's maybe raining outside, all dark except for the oof. I didn't know how long I had slept when a sound suddenly awakened me. Something was scratching at the door. The door was bolted. Must be a dog or a jackal, I thought. And in a minute or so, the noise stopped. So what's happening? The door, he's in the middle of nowhere. There is a door. The paw of the animal, the dog or the jackal, scratching the door. Just imagine, there's a light in the bathroom. There's a stream of light coming in. Otherwise, it's pitch dark. He's in the middle of nowhere. It's probably raining outside. It's pitch dark everywhere. I shut my eyes in an effort to sleep. But the barking of a dog put an end to my efforts. A dog was barking outside. He could recognize the bark of the dog in the sense that he realized that this was not the bark of a stray village dog, but it was the sound, the bark of a hound dog, which are more of guard dogs. I was familiar with it. Why? Because 2 houses from us in Munger lived Mr. Martin. Please make a note of it. Martin, a British guy. Okay, an English guy, non-Indian. He had a hound which bayed just like this. So he was familiar with the sound made by the hound. Who on earth kept a pet hound here? I thought of opening the door to find out, as the sound seemed pretty near. But then I thought, why bother? I was a little scared. It was better to get some sleep. What time was it now? So he wants to know the time. A faint moonlight came through the window, which means probably the rain had stopped. The moonlight was visible. It was not cloudy, perhaps. I raised my left hand to glance at the wristwatch. He took his to see the time. And suddenly I get a shock. I gave a start because the wristwatch was gone. And yet, because it was an automatic watch, I always wore it to bed. I never took my watch away. It's like a smartwatch, which you never take off. Where did it disappear and how? Were there thieves around? If the thief could steal my wristwatch, they could also steal my car. What would happen to my car then? So the time and the date, please make a note of it. The date, the April date, 27th April, and the time are important elements in this particular story, because he keeps referring to, if you notice, to how much time he took to travel from X place to Y place, right? He's constant. So time is a constant factor in this particular story. Questions आ सकते हैं इसके ऊपर. Okay. So the watch going missing is as if to tell Aniruddha Bose that the present is gone. and he has been transported to the past. The watch that he was wearing is an indication of the present time. The fact that it is gone is an indication that he is now transported to the past that he is not aware of, to the past that he is not familiar with. Okay. I felt beside my pillow for my torch and found it gone too. The torch was missing as well. I jumped out of bed, knelt on the floor. You go on the knees on the floor to see whether it has dropped down, and looked underneath the bed. My suitcase too had disappeared. My head started spinning. Just imagine you are in a state like that. How scared would you feel? Something had to be done about it. I called out Chaukidar. There was no answer. I went to the door and found that it was still bolted. The window had bars. Then how could the thief enter? As I was about to unfasten the bolt, open it, I glanced at my hand and experienced an odd feeling. Had whitewash from the wall got to my hand because it was all white? Or was it white powder? Why did it look so pale? The color of his skin was no longer the skin color that he had. It had become very pale, very white. I had gone to bed wearing a vest. Why then was I wearing now a long sleeved silk shirt? I was no longer wearing the vest, the banyan. I was now wearing a long sleeved silk shirt. My head was throbbing, paining. I opened the door, chakarana and a bit of pain. I opened the door and went into the veranda. Chaukidar, I shouted. The word that came out of my mouth was not my voice. It had the unmistakable accent of an Englishman. Okay, I spoke. The voice that came out of me was that of an Englishman. And where was the Chaukidar? And where was this little cottage? There is now an open wide field in front of the bungalow. That thing with the tin roof was not there. It was now an open field. In the distance was a building with a high chimney. The surroundings were unusually quiet. Everything had changed. It also changed. I came back to the bedroom sweating. My eyes had got used to the darkness. Now I could see things in the room. Okay, I could make out the details. The bed was there, but it was covered with a mosquito net. I had not been using a mosquito net. Where did that come from? He has been transported to the past. He has been transported back by a century, in fact. We'll know about that in a while. The pillow too was unlike the one I had brought from Calcutta. This one had a border with frills. Mine did not have any frills. You know that frill ke saath wo border mein pillow ke saath rehta hai. The table and the chair stood where they did, but they had lost their aged look. They now looked new because he has been transported back in time. The varnished wood stone shone even in the soft light. On the table stood not a lantern but a kerosene lamp with an ornate shade. So everything had changed, including Aniruddha Bose. There were other objects in the room which gradually came into view. Now he could see with his naked eye, he could make out in the darkness. With the lantern, a pair of steel trunks in a corner, a folding bracket on the wall. Okay. Okay, bracket, which is like, on which you put something. Standing against the wall was a pair of galoshes. Galoshes are large shoes which were waterproof. They were made of rubber. Okay, they were made of rubber. So these are reference to shoes. I turned away from the object and took another look at myself. Till now, I had only noticed the silk shirt. Now I saw the narrow trousers and socks. He did not have shoes on, but I saw a pair of black boots on the floor by the bed. These belonged to the Englishman Indigo planter, not to Aniruddha Bose. So he had become that English man. I passed my right hand over my face and I realized that not only my complexion but my features too changed. I did not possess such a sharp nose, nor such thin lips or narrow chin. I felt the hair on my head, not here, and found that it was wavy and that there were sideburns which reached below my ears. So his entire personality had changed. The way he looked, in spite of my surprise and terror, obviously, any day, if you feel like you have completely changed, how do you react? I hope you are finding this story fascinating as I am. I suddenly felt this great urge to find what I look like. I can feel that I'm looking different, but I want to see in the mirror. But where to find a mirror? I strode towards the bathroom and opened the door with a sharp push and went in. There was nothing there. Earlier, there was nothing but a bucket. Now saw a metal bathtub and a mug kept on a stool beside it. The thing I was looking for was right in front of me, the mirror. An oval mirror fixed to a dressing table. I looked into it, but the person reflected was not me. So you see what is happening is that the mind working is that of Aniruddha Bose, but the body is that of the Englishman. Paranormal story. I repeat, the mind is that of Aniruddha Bose. He is thinking in the present, but his body is that of the past. The surroundings are that of the past, which he thinks he is able to see it clearly with his own eyes. The person reflected in it was not me. By some devilish trick, I had turned into a 19th century Englishman with a sallow complexion. Sallow is a yellow or pale complexion, and it is a kind of color that is associated with lack of energy, lack of vitality. Please note this down. How old? Sorry, blonde hair, that is golden hair, and light eyes from which shone a strange mixture of hardness and suffering. So it looked like the person was suffering. From his eyes that he could see in the reflection in the mirror, he could make out that the person was suffering. How old would the Englishman be? Not more than 30, but it looked as if either illness or hard work or both had aged him prematurely. So his age would not be more than 30, but the way he looked, because of his suffering, it looked as if he was older than 30. I went closer and had a good look at my face. Look at that single quotes, at my face, because he knows it's not his face, but his mind is his. You understand? As I looked, a deep sigh rose from the depths of my heart. The voice was not mine. The sigh too expressed not my feelings, but those of the Englishman. What followed made it clear. So it's a very fascinating kind of a construct. What followed made it clear that all my limbs were acting of their own volition. I did not have control over my limbs. Volition means out of, of their own volition, apni marzi se they were doing it. And yet it was surprising that I, Aniruddha Bose, was perfectly aware of the change in identity. My mind was working. I'm going on reiterating it because that's what you need to write in your answers. The mind is the only one which is working for him. He's able to see and realize that the world around him, including his own facial expressions, facial outlook, everything about him has changed. His hair, his chin, his nose, everything. But I did not know if the change was permanent or if there was any way to regain my lost self. So he's also feeling a little worried that, are ye permanent hai kya? Am I going to look like this Englishman who looks he's 30 but he's aged prematurely? I came back to the bedroom. Now I glanced at the table. Below the lamp was a notebook bound in leather. It was open at a blank page. Beside it was an inkwell with a quill pen dipped in it. Quill is a pen which is made of birds' feathers, and it was used in olden times. It would be, I'm not very great at drawing like this. The feathers would be like this, and this would be the sharp point with which to write. You dip it into the ink pot and write before pens were invented. I walked over to the table. Some unseen force made me sit in the chair and pick up the pen with my right hand. The hand now moved towards the left-hand page of the notebook, and the silent room was filled with the noise of a quill scratching the blank page. So the sound of the quill, this is another sound imagery. This is what I wrote, 27th April, 1868. So this is happening on 27th April, 1968. Before any one of you, before even I was born. Those fiendish mosquitoes are singing in my ears again. So that's how the son of a mighty empire has to meet his end. So this is how he starts writing. One second, now let me just look at our book, Prism book. See if that's the way it's written. Yeah, so he's beginning to write with the date on top, and this is what the Englishman starts writing. Fiendish means evil. Okay, very devilish mosquitoes are, you use the word fiend to convey something evil. Mosquitoes are singing in my ears again. So the mosquitoes are an important element out here. So that's how the son of a mighty empire has to meet his end. So he's talking about himself as a son of a mighty empire. Please use this key phrase. At the hands of a tiny insect. What strange will of God is this? Eric has made his escape. Eric, a family member. Percy and Tony, two, left earlier. Perhaps I was greedier than them. So in spite of repeated attacks of malaria, I couldn't resist the lure of indigo. Okay, so he's talking about people. I'm not, not relative. Eric, Percy, and Tony have left that place. Okay, or perhaps they left before they could succumb to malaria. But I was greedier. So in spite of repeated attacks of malaria, I couldn't resist the lure of indigo because it fetched him a lot of financial returns. No, not only that, one must not lie in one's diary. So I must not lie. My countrymen know me too well, that they know me that I am a greedy person. I did not lead a blameless life at home either. So I did a lot of wrong things, and they surely have not forgotten that. The people of my country are aware of that. So I do not dare to go back home. So I must go be here. I cannot go back like Eric, Percy, and Tony. I know that I will have to stay here and lay down my life on this alien soil. What is the alien soil? India. For an Englishman, it is alien soil. My place will be beside the graves of my wife Mary and my little son Toby, who have died. Mary and Toby are his family members who have died. I have treated the natives here so badly that there is no one here to shed a tear at my passing away. So he confesses that he's not been a nice man. He has treated the Indians badly, so that when he dies, nobody is going to feel sad. Arey, mar gaya. Nobody is going to think about that. My real worry is about Rex. That is the hound whose voice Bose had heard. Alas, faithful Rex, when I die, these people, perhaps Mirjan would miss me, my faithful trusted bearer Mirjan, who is his servant, and Rex. So when I die, these people will not spare you. They will either stone you or club you to death. If only I could do something about it. So he's worried about his dog. I could write no more. My hands were shaking, not mine, the dairies. So he's making a distinction. This is very important, that the hands which are shaking are not that of Bose. Though literally his hands are shaking, but the hands are shaking of the person who is actually writing that, because what he has written, Bose would be completely unaware of it. But these are the thoughts in the mind of the Englishman, the indigo planter. I put down the pen. Then my right hand dropped and moved to the right and made for the handle of the drawer. I opened it. Inside there was a pin cushion, a brass paperweight, a pipe, and some papers. The drawer opened a little more. A metal object glinted in the half light. What is it? It was a pistol. Its butt inlaid with ivory. So a very costly pistol. The hand pulled out the pistol. It had stopped shaking, so his hand is no longer shaking. A group of jackals cried out outside. It was as if in answer to the jackal's cry that the hound bayed again. So jackals are there. So it's almost like a jungle. It's almost like a jungle out there 100 years ago. I left the chair where this bungalow is there. I left the chair and advanced towards the door. I went into the veranda. The field. So who is moving? Bose is moving. But no, Bose is not in control of his own body now. The field in front was bathed in moonlight. So moonlight was pretty clear. About 10 yards from the veranda stood a large greyhound. He wagged his tail as he saw me. Rex. It was the same deep English voice. The echo of the call came floating back from the faraway factory and bamboo grove. Rex. Rex. So there was an echo when he called out. Rex came up towards the veranda. As he stepped from the grass onto the cement, my right hand rose to my waist, the pistol pointing towards the hound. Rex stopped in his tracks, his eye on the pistol. He gave a low growl. My right forefinger pressed the trigger. Rex knew that he's going to be shot at. As the gun throbbed with a blinding flash, he's thinking he's doing him a favor because otherwise he will be stoned and clubbed to death. So he's kind of giving him an escape with his own pistol. So he's giving him death. He thinks death given by the master is preferable to death being given by the native Indians. That's also an interesting comparison. Rex, lifeless, as the gun throbbed with the blinding flash, smoke and the smell of gunpowder filled the air. Rex, lifeless, blood-splattered body lay partly on the veranda and partly on the grass. It had collapsed. The sound of the pistol had awakened the crows in the nearby trees. You know, the crows suddenly making a noise. A hub means a sudden kind of a commotion. Mix of noises as if it is creation of busy activity. Okay. Yeah. I came back into the bedroom, bolted the door and sat on the bed. The shouting drew near. I placed the still hot muzzle of the pistol by my right ear. That's all I remember. Which means the Englishman shot himself that night. He killed himself. He died by suicide. Which is why, oh God, I'm getting goosebumps. The ghost of the Englishman was there in that dark bunker. And it so happened that this man had gone there exactly 100 years after that person had killed himself. This thing by my right ear, which means he's going to shoot himself. I woke up at the sound of knocking. I've brought your tea. Okay, I've brought your tea. Daylight flooded in through the window. Out of sheer habit, my eyes strayed to my left wrist. 13 minutes past 6. I brought the watch closer. So now the watch is back. To read the date, April the 28th, 1968, 100 years later. I now opened the door and let Sukhanram in. There is a car repair shop half an hour down the road, sir. It will open at 7. You see, again, the references of time. Very good, I said, and proceeded to drink my tea. Would anyone believe me when they heard of my experience on the night of the 100th anniversary of the death of an English indigo planter in Birbhum? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this particular story. Let me just see if there are any other points that I need to mention to you. So basically, the watch symbolizes the connection with the past. Please make a note of it. The watch is an important element in this particular story, the wristwatch. This is an automatic watch, which means that it would have shown the date as well. The mind is conscious of Aniruddha Bose, but it has no control over the body. So it's a paranormal activity, which means that it is outside the scope of scientific reasoning, and it's a very unnatural kind of occurrence. And he could not control the actions of his mind, as his mind was in the body of another person, right? He's not able to control because the body is that of another person, but the mind is his, right? So he feels rather surprised. He also feels very helpless, and he's reliving the last moments of that Englishman planter. Okay. The element of indigo in the story represents the greed of the English planters who are lured by money, and they mistreated the indigo, the native Indian indigo plantation workers. Even though the mind is that of Bose, what is very important, please make a note of this. I'm going on reiterating. What is important is that he's not able to control the actions, or he thinks, see, obviously he's not killed anybody. Bose has not killed anybody, but he in his mind, he's not able to. So it's almost like a bad dream. he's not able to kabhi hota hai na, like I get dreams about, that I am walking down a mountain and suddenly large stones start rolling down and you're trying to escape the large stones. Now it's not happening to you, but you're imagining in your dream. So he's mentally conscious as Bose, but his actions are determined by the Englishman. So it shows a traveling into a very unsettled past. So he has gone into that dark bungalow where somebody has killed himself and his dog exactly 100 years ago on the same night, and everything seems to relive itself in Bose's life, or at least that's what he imagines. So Satyajit Ray in this story, what is very fascinating is that he's able to tell us about Aniruddha Bose's plight on that night, about how confused he is. His pillow is different, his wristwatch is missing, his suitcase is missing, everything, right? He loves his hound, the Englishman, but he's also able to understand the last moments of the Englishman, that he loves his hound, but he does not want it to be killed by the villagers. So he thinks that the death at his hands is preferable to death being, as a result of being stoned by the villagers. So it's a very twisted kind of logic. Okay, it's a very twisted kind of logic which is presented by the Englishman. तुम्हारी मौत ही होगी लेकिन मैं मार दूं तो तुम्हारे लिए बेहतर है. Okay, so the guilt of having killed his beloved hound dog Rex may have caused this unsettled soul after death. That people who die by suicide, people say that, I'm not saying this happens, unki booth, unki pret, keep roaming around, they don't get settled. So he's killed himself and he's killed his dog. So the soul is still in a disturbed state. It's, as I said, it's all paranormal kind of stories. And they take over the ghost of the body of the guest. That's what happens. The Englishman takes over. Just like he used to control the lives of the native indigo planters, he controls the body of Aniruddha Bose. That's an interesting kind of way of approaching it. Suddenly, mere dimag. The date 28th is important because it shows the 100th year date. So colonial rule is another important element in this story. And that's why I say it was interesting that he mentioned to us right at the beginning that his brother is going to be settled in England. So colonial rule of British is an important element of this story. So I hope you have understood, enjoyed with me the story. Later, the short notes, very short notes, will be put in on the Instagram and the WhatsApp channels. Please have a look at it. But more importantly, the SWS success papers will be out September, October, wherein MCQs, reasoning questions, a long format, everything will be written. The test papers will be there chapter wise for you to be able to understand how to approach such questions and answers. Okay. Tata, bye bye. Thank you very much. God bless you. Namaskar.